Yeah.
When I learned how to hold, like, joy and sorrow at the same time, um, because the 2 can and must coexist, that's kind of a life-changing realization. I can be completely heartbroken over something and also be completely full of joy.
Ever wonder if the hidden, subconscious thoughts running in the background of your mind are the real reason you keep hitting a wall with your time and money? Did you know that we have a free community of spirit led leaders just like you? Powerhouse men and women who are digging deep into these exact kingdom principles so they can lead with authentic authority. Head over to authenticvoiceleadership.com right now to join the conversation, connect with like minded leaders, and grab all of the exclusive resources and goodies from today's expert. Today, we are sitting down with Liz Taylor, a certified mindset coach and the founder of Legacy Coaching Group. With over 13 years of financial coaching experience, Liz blends the practical mechanics of behavior with the powerful neuroscience behind the Habit Finder assessment tool. Today, she is sharing how to identify the areas of mental risk when the pressure is high, how to stop running on autopilot by executing a purposeful life pivot, and what it practically looks like to break free from hustle culture so you can lean into God's design for rest and celebrate your biggest wins. Liz, I am so glad that you're here with us today, and I am so excited to hear all about what you do. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. Um, so I do mindset coaching is the easiest way to describe it. I can kind of geek out on the neuroscience and all that fun stuff. But it's really about behaviors because our behaviors are driven by our thoughts. And I think the statistic is that it's like 99% of our thoughts are subconscious. And
Mhm.
that's a little bit terrifying, right? Like, so we're being controlled by these thoughts that we don't even know that they're running in the background. And so I am certified in a tool called Habit Finder. It's a very powerful assessment tool and it assesses 6 habits of thinking. So it's connection with others, mental creation, the ability to dream and plan, physical creation, the ability to make that all happen, structure, so the structure needed to support the effort, and then personal fulfillment and self worth. And as you can imagine, they're all kind of tied together, but it's a beautiful a beautiful connection when you start putting those pieces of the puzzle together to kind of see like, oh, yeah, my self-worth is actually really affected when this happens or when I think this way. And so it's kind of neat when those puzzle pieces come together. But yeah, it's called Habit Finder. The assessment can be found at habitfinder.com/Liz, my name, and then I'll get a notification and can look at your results. And I offer a free debrief of the results. And so we can kind of go through and just and again, it's assessing areas of risk is the way that we like to think of it. So it's not necessarily like you always think this way or this is, it's just it highlights areas of risk when especially the pressure's high and life isn't going as planned,
Yes.
where your mind might kind of take you in a not so healthy direction.
I absolutely love that, and I love that you have a tool where you can assess that risk because I read a book once, and I'm such a neuroscience nerd as well, so we can geek out together, and but I read a book about your brain controls you, and I was like, "No, that's no, my brain doesn't." Of course, your brain controls your functions, but it doesn't control my thoughts, and then as I read it, I was like, "Wow, how much is subconscious?" And, so what do you say about moving the dial?
Mhm,
'Cause, since we can program our brain, right? We can
mhm,
change the way that our reactions are.
mhm.
So can you talk a little bit about that? That just is fascinating to me.
Yeah, so there's another habit finder coach and what she says is that, we're all writing a story. So whenever things happen in our life, we're creating a story around that, how we play into it, how it affects us. And what she says is we're writing a story anyway. We might as well write a good one.
I
And
love
if
it.
we're not, I know, right? And so if we're not paying attention to what's going on, like, typically, that story is not gonna write itself in a super positive way, when we're not paying attention. For example, it might even be as simple as a text thing with a friend, and you're reading into it the wrong way, and you have taken it so far off course in your head of what they're saying and what the meaning behind it and all of that. And they're on the other end thinking, this is great, whatever. And so just those things where we can just kind of spin out. And so if we can learn to rewire our brain so that we're approaching all of those from more of a positive light, kind of giving people the benefit of the doubt, it just, I mean, again, kind of back to that personal fulfillment, it just makes life so much more enjoyable when we're not catastrophizing every little thing that happens.
Yes.
And trust me, I mean, like, there are times where, like, it's rough. I'll be honest, like, this has been kind of a rough week for me with my daughter's about to graduate, and it's a emotional season, as you can imagine, but it's like
Yes.
there's just a lot of little disappointments that are happening, and each one of those disappointments in and of themselves wouldn't necessarily be a big deal, but, like, they're piling up. It's been, like, a pretty rough couple of days, and so, like, we could wallow in that and blow every one of those things up into a big deal, or we can say, okay, you know what? This is what this week has turned into. How can we make the best of it? I think it's always a choice of how we react to those things. Another thing you hear often in coaching is control the controllables, and so
Yeah.
there's going to be a whole lot of life that we can't control. And
Mhm.
if we waste a ton of emotional energy on those things that we can't control, for what, So it's
Mhm.
focus on what can we control, our actions, our reactions to what happens, and just kind of make the best of those. So yeah, it's back to your point of the brain controls things. I would go as far as to say, because I've seen it, I think negative thoughts can even impact our physical bodies. There are some physical conditions that can absolutely be because of thought patterns and negative thoughts, and it's pretty wild.
Yes.
So,
In aromatherapy, we talk about that. I do emotional release through aromatherapy, and there's a book called A More Excellent Way, and it is not emotional release book, but it's a spiritual development book. And he really goes into that. He says, bitterness is tied to arthritis because if you
uh,
look at scripture, it says bitterness dries up the bones. What is
uh-huh,
drying up the bones? Arthritis. So it's
uh-huh,
even in scripture what you're saying. So I love
uh-huh,
that you bring that up. And I would love to know what are some ways that people can start that rerouting process, and that's what you coach on, right? Some of those habits that can retrain our
uh-huh,
thought patterns and how we can react instead of being on autopilot, or retraining our autopilot, right? Programming the autopilot so that we get the
mhm,
results we want instead of reaction mode all the time.
mhm. Yeah, and it's not rocket science, by any stretch of the imagination, but it's so impactful. I actually have a mechanical engineering degree, so I try to overthink things a lot of times. It's like, don't overthink this. It really is this easy. The first step is always awareness. And so it might mean journaling, meditating a little bit, just slowing down your mind enough to recognize, okay, what am I even thinking? Like, what is going on
Mhm.
in there? And then oftentimes when things are not going well, you start to feel it somewhere in your body. So paying enough attention to recognize, okay, you know what? When stress hits, I feel it in my gut, I feel it in my throat, I feel it wherever. And so taking the time to recognize that so that when you start to feel those physical symptoms, you can pause and say, okay, what is really going on here? What is really stirring these emotions? Where are my thoughts taking me? It really is as simple as awareness and paying attention and not letting that subconscious thing just take you wherever it wants to take you. Another person I know calls it kind of the drift. And if we are not setting some goals, setting some targets, in every area of our life, the drift is rarely going to take us where we want to be. And then we wake up 5 or 10 years down the road, and it's like, how did I even get here? And so without that awareness and those plans and setting just some intention around what you want in life. And there might be some unmet expectations along the way. So I just actually wrote a newsletter today, and it was around the pivot, right? Like, do you remember that Friends episode when they're moving the sofa and Ross is like, pivot, pivot, trying to get the sofa up the stairs. And so I referenced that, but it's like, I think when we um, can learn how to pivot without it just destroying everything, like, that's
Mhm.
when we can kinda find that contentment and peace in whatever
Mhm.
the situation may bring. And, you mentioned scripture. I am a believer. Those are the times that we just kinda have to lean into God and scripture and recognize that, all the answers have already been given to us. We just have to look to the right place to find them. So
Exactly. I love that you bring up the pivot. I don't really watch a lot of TV, so I haven't watched the episode of Friends, but I know what you're talking about. One time, the Lord said, "Walk over to the window," and I was like, "Okay." So I walked over to this window. There was these blinds, right, that open and close, and you can
Mhm,
shift it and turn the direction based on what the sun is doing.
mhm,
And he said, "Open the blinds this way and look outside." So I did, and he was like, "What do you see?" And I'm just looking around. I'm going, "Okay, I see. Yeah, this is cool." And then he said, "Turn it the other way." I was like, "Oh." So that side had, like, the parking lot with all the cars and stuff. This side had, like, open grassy field with some trees where
mhm,
people picnicked. And I was like, "That's 2 different vantage points from the same window."
mhm,
It was just a different perspective point. And
mhm,
he said, "When you look the other way, it's the pivot point."
mm,
And then so I'm a dancer, and the pivot point when you dance is like where you step forward and then you can step your other foot around, but the point in the middle doesn't change. It
mhm,
just where you look changes.
mhm,
And
mhm,
so I use that analogy a lot when I'm teaching. It's like this
mhm,
is your pivot point, and when you turn this way, you're still in the same spot, but you're looking in a different way.
mhm,
And so I feel like that is so key because you can't always change your circumstances, but you
mhm,
can change how you pivot to
mhm.
look from a different vantage point. And so that's really great perspective about that.
Yeah, no, I agree. You're when you're talking about looking out the window, I was several years ago. I had gone out to Vegas for a conference, and we went out to. If you're ever in the area, I cannot recommend. It's a state park called Valley of Fire. It's
Oh, cool.
it's magical. It's beautiful. It's the coolest place. And so we had gone out to Valley of Fire to just take some pictures and all that, and we stayed for sunset. And so we're up on kind of this ridge overlooking and watching the sunset, and it was like the sunset was beautiful, but then you turn around and you look behind you and the sky was just glowing, and it was as a, you're on your tripod and you're trying to take these pictures, it's like, I don't know which direction to face because, like, it's all amazing, and sometimes it might be the opposite of that. It might be you're looking in every direction looks horrible, but I promise there's one place where you can look and find that light, find the glow, whether it's and again, kind of that recognition, because oftentimes when things are going well, we don't really even pay attention to how
Mhm,
great things are. And yeah, so whether you're looking around and you're seeing a beautiful sunset in every single direction, or whether you're looking out a window and like, well, that's not very pretty, but you know what? That is actually quite attractive, And so I love those analogies to think about certain seasons of our life and how we can look
mhm.
at them. That's great.
Absolutely. Yeah, I talk to the Lord about, like, where we look, so keep your
Mhm,
eyes on him, right? And everything else
mhm,
fades, and everything
mhm,
else just it becomes background noise, but where our focus goes, our energy flows is one of things that my coach has taught me, and,
mhm,
what you focus on flourishes is what I normally
mhm,
say, so if you focus on it, it's gonna grow. It's going to take root and become something, and so we need to be careful about picking the right things to focus
mhm,
on, right? So our brain neuroscience nerd moment, but our brain's constantly scanning for information to filter out the things that do not line up with the truth that our brain believes. And so if we
mhm.
believe something negative, our brain is scanning our environment to look to reinforce that. So it
Exactly. Yeah.
really does take that awareness piece
Mhm,
that you were
mhm,
talking about earlier to really bring intention into the awareness. And if we're willing to do that, then we really can shift our vantage point a lot
mhm,
faster and start rerouting that pathway and breaking up that hard ground that is like rooted lies. Start breaking
mhm,
up that ground so that it can come loose and we can have a new pathway now.
mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and circling back to the story that we tell ourselves, I have a resource around rewiring your money mindset, rewiring your story around money. And one of the things I say is, ask yourself, first of all, the awareness, what is the story? Second of all, is it true? And is it helpful? And most often it's not true and it's not helpful when we get in that cycle. Sometimes it actually might be true, but it's not helpful. And either way, we can rewrite it. So even if there is a little bit of truth to it, how can we rewrite it so that it is still true, but it's also helpful? And
Oh,
so again, recognizing that it's empowering to just think that we have it can be a little daunting maybe too, but it's that we can actually do that. And then, talking about the brain, it's like it's so interesting because it's such a powerful thing. Our thoughts are so powerful, but yet to your point, the brain is pretty archaic, like it's trying to take the path of least resistance, that confirmation bias. So if you're telling yourself a story or you have this belief that you've created, the brain is going to do everything it can to confirm that because it doesn't want to work that hard. It doesn't want to work hard enough to disprove it. So yeah, so if you're telling yourself, this is horrible, this is, everything always goes against me, your brain is going to be looking to confirm that. And if you're telling yourself, I love my life, like I get to do all these things, like your brain is going to scan to find those things too. There's
Hmm.
that, what is it, the reticular activation thing. So like when you buy a certain car and then you start seeing them everywhere you look, or I can't remember the term for it, but I think it's something reticular activation, whatever. But yeah, again, it's like the brain is literally looking for the thing that you've made it aware of. So it's kind of, to me, I find that super fascinating because again, it's so powerful and it controls so much, but yet it's also so basic on so many levels.
Yes, right? All from that primitive part of our brains, right?
Yeah, yeah,
We think that we live from this prefrontal cortex all the time, and then we forget, no, we don't. We
yeah,
live from the primitive brain most of the time, and we have to
yeah,
activate our prefrontal cortex, which is really important to do. And that's what
yeah,
you're talking about. That's what that awareness piece is.
yeah.
So, would you mind giving an example of something that you have seen shift in that money mindset? And I'm thinking what you're talking about can apply to anything, right? So, like, addictions, and I'm
Yeah,
thinking I'm sitting here like fasting sugar,
yeah,
and as
okay.
I'm fasting sugar, I'm craving it, right? So I'm
Uh-huh.
like thinking, "Huh, is it true and is it helpful? I need that donut. Is that true? No. Is it helpful? No. That wouldn't help me." So, like, could you give me some examples on how people walk that out?
Yeah, with money, it gets really interesting because it's so emotional. Everything about
Yes.
our buying habits and everything is so emotional. And so I mean, practically speaking, like one of the simplest things to do is sleep on a purchase. Everything in our world has made buying so easy. The one click
Mhm.
buy on Amazon, it shows up at your door the next day or sometimes the same day.
Yes.
I mean, I hate shopping, so Amazon is kind of my friend and my enemy at the same time. But
Right.
but as the story could be as simple as like, I want this or I deserve this or whatever that may be. And then it's like, sleep on it. Do you actually want this thing? Or did it just come across your feed and you're like, "Oh, that's interesting," you
Mhm.
know? And so again, it's like little things, but those little things very much add up when you're looking at a budget and all the not so fun parts of it. And so again, it's the behavior behind why you're doing what you're doing with money. And even from a saving standpoint, are you saving from a place of I'm trying to make good decisions, or are you saving from a place of I'm terrified of what the future holds?
Yeah.
And the outcome might be the same either way, but if you're
Yeah.
coming at it from a place of fear for the future,
Right.
again, it's just going to be very different. So I don't know if I totally answer your question, but it's just recognizing with anything, why am I doing this thing? The biggest places to look are your time and your money. So whether
Mhm.
it's, why am I saying yes to this thing or no to this thing?
Mhm.
And does it really and truly align with my values? Time and money are the two easiest places to track it. Show me your bank account and your calendar, and I'll tell you what means the most to you. You know, and
Yeah. Like, "Don't
and
look,
and
don't look."
yeah, and so when those are not in alignment with what you truly value, that's where that discontentment comes in. And so
Mhm.
again, just kind of taking that time to say, okay, you know what? Am I spending my time? Am I spending my money on things that truly matter to me, and recognizing where that's out of alignment? And it's not hard to do. It's not always fun to do.
I find it really difficult to do the time and money audit sometimes, especially if I've not been intentional. So,
Right.
like, when you haven't been intentional, there is a little bit of like, "Oh my gosh, what have I done?" But when you are intentional in looking at where your money is going and where your time is going and how you're spending it, then that intention moves forward into it, right? So,
Yeah.
I know it really is telling because, I went through this program, for debt once, and I had to print out all of my bank statements and get different color highlighters and highlight what the kind of expense it was. So it wasn't just where are your expenses, it's like,
Mhm.
what kind of expense is it? And seeing those different colors was really enlightening, and I realized some of my habits that I didn't even realize were taken from my budget the way that it was. I just find and then where we're spending our time, and right now I think that people that if you looked at my time and my budget, you'd be like, "Man, you only care about your business."
Well, and there are seasons, you know what I mean? There are seasons, and so when you're growing a business or doing a new thing in your business, obviously it is going to take some time and money. It's not just gonna magically fall out of the sky, right? And
Mhm.
so recognizing, okay, you know what? This is a season, and maybe it's even conversations with family around that. Like, look, I know that this season is gonna be a little bit chaotic and crazy, and so let's find a plan where we can all work together. I don't want you to feel like I'm neglecting you, and also I could, use your support in this and whatever. And so having those conversations, but also recognizing, because what oftentimes happens with overachievers is you get into that routine and then you don't let that season come to an end.
Ooh, that's
It's
good.
that constant, like, chasing more, chasing more, chasing more, versus recognizing, like, hey, I accomplished the thing. Let's sit in this for a little while. Let's enjoy this. And the same thing can happen with money. Like, it's interesting with money is that oftentimes you haven't even defined the finish line. Like, most of us haven't really sat
Yeah.
down and said, okay, when have I crossed the finish line with money? Like, there's other things where it's pretty obvious, like
Right.
in business and with time, oftentimes there's like a time frame. But with money, very few people actually sit down and define, like, what is that finish line? And then once you define it, like, okay, let's say you reach it tomorrow. Will you be satisfied? Or will you now say, "Oh, well, now I'm here. Let's move the goalpost again. Let's keep chasing. Let's keep chasing." And so
Yeah.
it's that balance, and you don't wanna lose the passion and the ambition and all of that, but also, like, if you're constantly chasing and never actually enjoying what you've created, that can almost become an addiction, honestly. And
Yes, I
so
can see that. Yeah.
yeah. And so I really think it's, again, that intentionality of, like, okay, you know what? I know that this season of my business is gonna be kinda a lot, but let's give it 3 months. Let's give it 6 months. I mean, just like with goals, like, set a time frame and then get buy-in from family and whoever you need to kinda say, like, "Can we work together to make this as smooth as possible?" And then commit to yourself that you're gonna actually, like, sit back and enjoy it for a little while once you get there.
That is so good, and I think that's something that's missing in our business training is
Mhm.
that the rhythm of life is in seasons. I was at a conference last week that I was part of, and one of the speakers there said, "I run my business in seasons."
Mm,
And it's like what you're saying here, and it's even that's the way that biblical farming,
mm.
just the rhythm
The
of life,
Sabbath. Yeah, even weekly
you have
Sabbath, yeah.
winter, spring, summer, fall, they all
Mhm,
have their purpose, they all have a part. There's a time to plant, there's a time to rest, there's a time to sow, there's a time to
mhm,
reap, and it's like, "Oh, I can apply that to my business that I
mhm,
can rest at some point."
uh-huh,
And personally, I had an experience recently where and I'm sure that you'll relate, but I was doing a lot of partnerships and collaborations, and then I had a week where somehow I messed up my calendar, and the people that were partnering with me, it was like some you know how, like, the last week of one month will still be the first week of another month, and there's kind of
mhm,
like an overlap, and so it can be confusing?
mhm,
Well, apparently the communication that I had was the last week of the month, and it was also the first week of the month, so I had it on a different week for both of them
uh,
than they had, and so I was like,
mhm,
"Oh my goodness," so I'm doing double 1 week, but then what I realized was that I didn't have anything that week, I didn't have any partnerships planned, and I was, like, looking at my calendar, and I was like, "You know what? I never even considered planning some rest for myself. I get to rest this week."
right,
It was
right,
so rejuvenating because I was just in work mode and I forgot to plan rest.
mhm,
And so, like, when you're talking about, like, these times of and seasons, to be it's really comforting to me to hear, and I'm sure it will be to our listeners too, because, I mean, my goodness, it feels like we're gonna be in it forever.
mhm,
It feels like we're gonna be in the grind mode forever, and we're, like, trying to get out of hustle culture. We're trying to
mhm,
get out of the grind mode. We're trying to create freedom for ourselves, and we're like, "Whoa, this doesn't feel like freedom."
mhm,
But that's yet because of seasons. And I would love if you have more to speak on that, I would love to hear it because I think that that's something that's really lacking in our training and especially in
Mhm.
business and our leadership training. And schools are kind of in seasons, they have the summer off,
Uh-huh.
but we don't
Uh-huh.
do that in business very
Uh-huh.
often unless we're intentional.
Yeah, yeah, and I would say that, the other thing, kinda back to it's a choice because if you don't pay attention, again, kind of that drift, that
Mhm.
subconscious,
Mhm.
you will absolutely stay in the grind, stay in the whole hustle, stay in that, like, what's next? Let's keep going faster and better and bigger and all of that. And again, I think there's certainly a time for that, but also if you don't I mean, you're gonna burn out so fast if you don't take a break
Yeah.
from that and you don't rest and you don't, and then again, what's it all for if you're not actually celebrating the wins, if you're not actually
Right.
taking time to enjoy what you've created. The concept of Sabbath or even a sabbatical or whatever. I'm in Atlanta, so, we're headquarters for Chick-fil-A, and they don't work on Sundays, and most companies would be like, "That is crazy. Imagine how many more chicken sandwiches they could sell on a Sunday if they were open." And also, side note, I feel like I always crave Chick-fil-A on a Sunday for whatever
Right.
reason. But again, kinda back to, like, your sugar thing, it's like when you tell yourself you can't have something, whether it's something that they set for you or you set it on yourself, and it's like then you're so uber focused on it that I do
Yes.
not diet well because when I tell myself I can't have something, it's like all I think about. Yeah, so recognizing, like, I mean, again, and if you are a believer, trusting God, like, if you truly trust that he's gonna provide, if you give him that opportunity, especially if you dedicate that time off, for him,
Mhm.
um, I mean, again, I can say that with money too, is like, you can be holding on for dear life, or you can kinda open up and be like, "Okay, God, you know what? I trust you with everything, including my finances." And, I mean, that was honestly kinda my story. That was an awakening experience for me. A couple years ago, we found out my husband was gonna lose his job, and, I wanted to say that I trusted God with everything, but there were some emotions bubbling up in me that proved otherwise, and so I had
Right.
to kinda really take a close look at that and say, "Are you aligned? Are you what you're saying and what you're truly believing, are those really aligned, and what does it look like to really and truly hand that over to God?" And, it's not easy, especially
Right.
when it's something that's, even with parenting, I've got kids going off to college and stuff, and sometimes you wanna, like, hold on and, like, "You're walking down the wrong path, like, let me fix this for you," but, you gotta let open up and let them kinda, um, let them fly, let them leave the nest, and so,
Yeah.
it's definitely
Yeah.
definitely a hard season in a lot of ways and beautiful in others. I mean, that's the other
Mhm.
piece of it is it truly is, I think when I learned how to hold, like, joy and sorrow at the same time, um, because the 2 can and must coexist, that's kind of a life-changing realization. I can be completely heartbroken over something and also be completely full of joy, and I don't know exactly how to tell somebody to do that. I think you just have to kinda experience it and trust it, but that's a kind of a beautiful place to be, and I feel like that is where we are in life the vast majority of the time, quite honestly, because especially now with the information that we're bombarded with, there's always gonna be things out there that break our heart, and finding that balance of how much of this can I emotionally let into my world, and then how much do I need to shift my focus to things that are good and bringing me joy and not caring about the things that are breaking my heart, but also, it's kinda that, like, you gotta fill your cup with the joy and
Yes.
the hope and the promises so that then you can go pour into those things that, areas where you wanna help and all of that, and, back to the business, I mean, I think it's kinda the same way, like, if we don't figure out a way to let ourselves, fill up with the success that we've had, it's just gonna become a complete drain constantly.
Those are some really beautiful points, and I love how you brought some of that in because we can forget that so easily, and it's so important to celebrate our wins. It's so
Mhm,
important to look back and see what we have accomplished, what progress has been made, so that we're not constantly looking at a place that we haven't measured up yet.
mhm,
And so I love how you bring that together. such a good note to end on is like celebrating the wins and
Mhm.
looking at the progress you've made. And I would
Yeah.
love to hear your thoughts before we leave about any of those kind of things that you have in your head that you want to get in our head.
Yeah, I agree. If you're familiar with the Enneagram, I'm a 7, so I'm always excited about a new adventure and pretty positive in general in life. So I'm all about celebrating anything and everything. But it kind of comes back to that pivot that we talked about earlier. You know, we can be standing in a place that is so hard in some ways, but so beautiful in other ways. Even when we're hurting or frustrated or angry or whatever might be going on, we can find something to celebrate. I really and truly believe that. Like I mean, I've walked with some friends through some horrible tragedies over the past couple of
Yeah.
years, and it's just so important to kind of feel all of it and to be okay with the days that are heartbreaking, but also recognize they're still good. There's still something going on that can be, celebrated. God works in such interesting ways in those seasons, if we are open to recognizing him and hearing him. And so I think maybe that's my last thing. Just invite God to show you and celebrate with you. He wants to celebrate us. Like he wants to walk with us. He'll carry us through the hard times, but he also really wants to celebrate with us too. And so, yeah, I think that would be where I would land the plane.
I love that so much. Yes. So, can you tell our listeners where can they find you if they want to connect?
Yeah, sure. So I'm not the best on social media, but Coach Liz Taylor on Instagram and Facebook. But my website is Legacy Coaching Group, which is really long. I apologize, but legacycoachinggroup.com. And so you can find me there. The link to the assessment is also on my website. And then Liz at legacycoachinggroup.com is my email. So any of those, I would love to connect in any way. I love I love conversations like this, and so, yeah, so if any of this resonated with a listener, please reach out. I would be more than happy to have a conversation and learn more about what's going on in your world.
I love it so much, Liz. Thank you. I really appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thank you. It was fun.
Hey, Radiant Leader, to dive deeper into our resources and connect with a powerhouse circle of like-minded leaders, come join our free community right now over at authenticvoiceleadership.com. I will meet you right back here next Tuesday. Your voice matters. Lead wild, lead free, stay radiant.